Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at an article called The Pressure of Physics, a Personal Reflection. It's a really fascinating look at success, especially, in a field like physics that just seems so impressive. I don't know about you, but it really got me thinking.
Yeah, and the way the author starts is interesting too. Almost like they're saying, I am a physics major, as if it's like a badge of honor or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's something to boast about. I wonder if it was more about the subject itself, or if maybe they were drawn to it because of how other people would see them,
Hmm.
you know, like the prestige that comes with saying, I study physics.
Right, like they needed to prove something, maybe not just to everyone else, but to themselves too. And I thought it was really interesting how they talked about their background, especially that need for validation.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, that whole traditional Asian upbringing thing where there's so much emphasis on academic achievement definitely plays into it. I'm curious, though, what really stood out to you about that part?
That whole thing about constantly being compared to other students who were also, high achievers, like they were always trying to be the best, to meet these crazy high standards, and they were never good enough. It's no wonder they felt so much pressure to succeed.
Yeah, it's like they were set up to chase that external validation right from the start. And so physics, a field that's often seen as the top of the intellectual ladder, just became the ultimate goal. But as we all know, success in any field requires more than just hard work and good grades, right?
Exactly. And that's actually where things start to get really interesting in the article. Like they get to college, and suddenly physics isn't just about memorizing formulas and, plugging in numbers.
Right. It demands a totally different way of thinking. You need genuine passion. You need to be creative with how you apply concepts. And you can't just get by on pure effort. Like, think about it. You could ace high school physics just by putting in the hours. Right. But university level physics, that's a whole other beast. You need a much deeper understanding.
It's like the difference between, learning the rules of a game versus actually figuring out how to win. And for the author, that's when the struggle begins. They talk about barely passing classes, feeling completely overwhelmed, pulling all-nighters just to keep up.
Yeah, and for someone who is used to being at the top of the class, that must have been devastating. It's one thing to know you're not good at something, but to be used to being good at something and then suddenly to feel like you're constantly falling behind, no matter how much effort you put in, that's got to be rough.
I know some people might even think that leaving physics was a drastic step. What are your thoughts?
I don't think it was drastic at all. I think it was about recognizing that their ambition wasn't aligned with their own well-being. They were literally experiencing burnout. They had anxiety, even physical health problems. It's like their story is a perfect example of how constant stress can actually hurt your immune system. It makes you so much more likely to get sick. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the hidden costs of chasing validation from others. Like their body was basically screaming at them, but were they really listening?
It's easy to ignore those signs when your whole sense of self-worth is tied up in what you achieve. But the author's story really reminds us that we have to prioritize our well-being. It's not worth sacrificing your health and happiness for.
What did you think about how they finally started to change their perspective?
Well, I thought it was really interesting how they realized that they had been chasing validation instead of chasing their dreams. It's a simple idea, but so powerful, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's a question we should all be asking ourselves. Why am I doing this? What do I truly want out of life? I think sometimes the most successful thing we can do is redefine what success actually means to us, not just what society tells us it should mean.
You mean letting go of those external expectations and really focusing on what brings you joy. That sounds great, but I think for a lot of us, that's easier said than done. What does that actually look like? Like, how do you go about redefining success? That's a great question, and one that I think we should definitely dive into more. Their story offers some really useful insights into breaking free from all that pressure and finding a path that's truly aligned with your own passions and your own well-being. So I think,
Okay, so we've talked a lot about this pressure to chase that external validation, but the author actually gives us a really good roadmap for how to break free from it. There are these key takeaways, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on them.
totally. I think because we have their personal story, it makes those takeaways even more powerful. So we
Right.
just go through them one by one.
Yeah, let's break them down. So the first one, it's all about intrinsic motivation. Choosing a path because it genuinely lights you up, not because you think it will impress other people.
Right. I love that. It's about finding that inner spark, that thing that makes you want to learn and grow just for the pure joy of it. Well, I have to say, it sometimes feels like our whole system is designed to reward external validation instead of internal motivation.
Ugh. It's true. Like, we're conditioned to chase those grades and awards, the recognition, that sort of thing. But the author's story, it really highlights how much easier things get when you're actually passionate about what you're doing. There's even research that shows people who are intrinsically motivated are more likely to stick with things and actually achieve their goals.
Exactly. It's like they're playing a completely different game. One where the score doesn't matter as much as just enjoying the experience of playing.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think that actually ties in nicely with the second takeaway, which is all about recognizing the dangers of hustle culture, especially the academic kind.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So, what are some of the signs that someone might be caught in that trap?
Well, I think if they're always comparing themselves to other people, if they're constantly sacrificing sleep to study or feeling guilty when they take breaks, those are some big red flags. It's all about that pressure to achieve, to be better than everyone else, even if it means burning yourself out.
It's like being stuck on a treadmill that just never starts. And I think we see in the author's story how that can have some pretty serious consequences. So, how do we get off that treadmill, so to speak? How do we break free from that kind of mentality?
Well, the third takeaway gives us a clue, which is all about finding a balance. Finding a balance between ambition and well-being.
Okay, so it's not about giving up on your ambitions. It's more about recognizing that success has to be about more than just what you achieve on the outside.
Right. It's about creating a life that's actually fulfilling, not
Yep.
just successful by someone else's definition. And that might even mean letting go of expectations that aren't serving you and taking a different path, even if it seems a little unconventional.
Yeah, that can take some serious courage, especially when you've been taught to think a certain way your whole life. It's something I struggle with, for sure. Like, I remember feeling so much pressure to pick a prestigious major in college, even though all I really wanted to do was write.
I think a lot of us can relate to that feeling. We're so quick to confuse perceived difficulty with genuine interest. But I think what we can learn from the author's journey is that it's never too late to redefine what success means to you and create a life that really feels authentic.
Yeah. To choose a path that feels right for you, aligned with your values, your passions, your well-being, the whole package. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else expects from us, especially when it comes to success. But this whole deep dive has really made me stop and think about what really matters, like what really makes a life successful.
It really all comes back to the author's experience, right? They learned the hard way that chasing external validation can be such a trap. Yeah, it might feel good for a little bit, like a quick hit of dopamine, but it's not going to make you truly happy in the long run.
Like they said, don't chase someone else's definition of success. Chase your dreams. That's so good. But I don't know, sometimes I think it's easy to get stuck in those big ideas without actually knowing what to do about it? Like, how do you actually live that out?
Well, I think a good place to start is just thinking about the things that you really enjoy doing. Those interests you might have put aside because they didn't seem practical or something. Or maybe because you thought they weren't impressive enough.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely guilty of that. Like, when I was younger, I loved writing poetry, but I basically gave it up when I started getting serious about my career and everything.
It's never too late to pick those passions back up, though.
Hmm.
What if you just set aside like 15 minutes a day to write? Even just a little bit. And just do it for you. No pressure, no expectations.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It doesn't have to be this big, overwhelming thing, just taking a small step to connect with something that brings you joy.
Exactly. And maybe for some of our listeners, it's something totally different. Maybe it's playing an instrument again, or joining a hiking group, or finally learning how to cook. I don't know.
Yeah, just anything that makes you feel more alive, really. And I think that's a great message to wrap up with. Forget what other people think. Just do what feels right for you. It's
Right.
all about remembering that true success is about living a life that's meaningful to you and nobody else. And like you said, the journey starts with that first step. Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the pressure of physics. I hope it's giving you some things to think about, maybe inspired you to take a look at your own definition of success. What are you really chasing? What brings you joy? Those are the important questions. And hey, maybe you'll find some answers by trying something new, something you've always wanted to do. We'll catch you next time on the deep dive, where we'll be exploring another fascinating topic and, well, hopefully uncovering some more hidden gems of knowledge along the way.